time when the candle of knowledge was being lit in the Islamic world, Europe was often described as being in the Dark Ages. Although this term is controversial, it is a fact that a large part of Europe was plagued by ignorance and intellectual backwardness. The Christian papacy held a powerful and often extremely oppressive control. Independent thought, especially if it conflicted with religious dogma, could be met with severe punishment. Education was largely confined to monasteries. The flow of ancient Greek and Roman knowledge had nearly ceased, and scientific inquiry was not a priority for society. It was a period of deep intellectual slumber, in stark contrast to the new, vibrant, and enlightened civilization emerging in the East. This contrast was extremely clear. While Europe was mired in intellectual stagnation, the Islamic world, especially under the Abbasid Caliphate, was emerging as an unparalleled center of learning. The heart of this revolution was the city of Baghdad, which the Abbasid caliphs, particularly Harun al-Rashid and his son al-Mamun, had transformed into the intellectual capital of the world. These rulers not only patronized scholars, but also spent immense resources to promote knowledge. Baghdad was like a magnet, drawing the most brilliant minds from across the globe. The core of this magnet was the Beit al-Hikmah, House of Wisdom. This was not merely a library, although it housed a collection of millions of books, but a grand research institution, an ancient super university where researchers from all over the world, speaking different languages like Greek, Syriac, Persian, and Sanskrit, and belonging to different religions, including Muslims, Christians, Jews, and Zoroastrians, gathered for a single purpose, the acquisition of knowledge. A systematic and large-scale translation movement was initiated at the House of Wisdom. The masterpieces of ancient Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge were meticulously and skillfully translated into Arabic. The works of Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, Ptolemy, Galen, and the great mathematicians of India were given the comprehensive garb of the Arabic language. The value of this work can be gauged by the fact that translators were often paid in gold, equal to the weight of their translated books. This reflects a society where intellectual labor was given the highest reward. The Arabic language played a key role in this intellectual revolution. It was not only the administrative language of a vast empire stretching from Spain to the borders of India, but it was also the language of the Quran, which gave it the status of a sacred and common scholarly language. From Cordoba to Samarkand, all scholarly work, debates, and new discoveries were written and read in Arabic, which formed a cohesive and vast intellectual ecosystem. Behind all this activity was a profound philosophy of knowledge. In this era, logic, rational reasoning, and critical thinking were not considered separate from or hostile to faith, but were seen as an essential and sacred part of religion. Scholars did not differentiate between the religious and the worldly. They believed that the knowledge of physics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy helped them to better understand the universe, and to understand the universe was in fact akin to understanding the Creator. The universe was like an open book in which the signs of God were scattered, and reading them through reason and observation was a spiritual act. This was the environment where curiosity was nurtured, where asking questions was not punished but encouraged. On this foundation, Muslim scientists did not just copy ancient knowledge. They developed a systematic scientific method. They emphasized experimentation, observation, and rational arguments. If an ancient Greek theory did not align with their own experiments and observations, they had the intellectual courage to challenge it. They had the audacity to say that Aristotle said this, but our experiment shows something else. This was the beginning of modern scientific skepticism. From this environment emerged the great minds who changed the course of world history. The first and foremost name among them is Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, who was born around 780 CE in the region of Khwarizm in present-day Uzbekistan. The allure of Baghdad's House of Wisdom brought him there, where he sparked a revolution in the world of mathematics. He not only introduced al-Jabr or algebra as a distinct discipline, but formally invented it. His famous book, Al-Kitab al-Mukhtasar fi Hisab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, was the first to present a systematic method for solving linear and quadratic equations. Today, every field from computer science to engineering is indebted to his work. The word algebra itself is derived from algebr in his book's title. Similarly, the word algorithm is derived from the Latinized form of his name, al-Khwarizmi. Furthermore, he played a key role in introducing the Hindu-Arabic numeral system, the digits 0 to 9, to the Muslim world and then to Europe, which revolutionized trade and science by replacing the old and complex Roman system of calculation. In the field of philosophy, Abu Yusuf Yaqub ibn Hasaq al-Kindi, known as the first philosopher of the Arabs, is a prominent name. He was born around 801 CE in the city of Kufa, Iraq. Besides Arabic, he was also proficient in Greek and Syriac, which enabled him to introduce the complex philosophy of Aristotle to the Islamic world. Al-Kindi was a true polymath who wrote nearly 270 books in various fields, including mathematics, medicine, astronomy, geography, and music. Centuries ago, he proposed the theory that the blue color of the sky is due to atmospheric scattering of light, and also presented early ideas about gravity. Another great thinker was Abu Rayhan al-Biruni, born in 973 CE in Khwarezm, Uzbekistan. He was an unparalleled master of measurement. He excelled in mathematics, astronomy, history, and geography. His greatest achievement was the measurement of the Earth's circumference, which he calculated with 99% accuracy. Amazingly, he performed this measurement while sitting on a mountain in the Punjab province of modern-day Pakistan without any modern technology, based solely on trigonometry and his observations. This is an incredible example of mathematical skill in the 10th century. Centuries before Copernicus, al-Biruni proposed the theory that the Earth rotates on its own axis. He spent a long time in India and wrote a comprehensive book on its people, customs, and beliefs. Kitab fi Tahqiq Malil Hind, a critical study of what India says, which is why he is called the founder of Indology. In the world of medicine, Abu Ali al-Hussein ibn Sina, known in the West as Avicenna, holds a legendary status. Born in 980 CE in the village of Afshana in Uzbekistan, Ibn Sina produced timeless work in medicine and philosophy. His book, Al-Qanun fi al-Tib, The Canon of Medicine, was a voluminous medical encyclopedia that was taught as a primary textbook in European universities for centuries, even until 1650 CE. He organized every field of medicine, diagnostics, pharmacology, surgery, and introduced new theories. He was the first to propose that negative thoughts and mental states directly affect a person's physical health, which is the foundation of modern psychosomatic medicine. At just 18 years of age, he successfully treated the Sultan of Bukhara, after which he was granted access to the royal library, which further polished his knowledge. In the field of optics, Abu Ali al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham, known in the West as al-Hazen, brought about a complete revolution. Born in 965 CE in Basra, Iraq, Ibn al-Haytham rejected the ancient Greek theory of Ptolemy and Euclid that light emanates from the eye and falls upon objects. He proved through his experiments that the process of vision occurs when light reflects from external objects and enters the eye. He provided the first correct scientific explanation of the structure and function of the eye. He invented the camera obscura, or pinhole camera, which was the precursor to modern cameras. He discovered the principles of how lenses work, which paved the way for the invention of the telescope and microscope. His work provided the foundation for European scientists like Copernicus, Galileo, Kepler, and Newton. In the field of chemistry, Jabir ibn Hayyan, known as the father of chemistry, made chemistry an experimental science. He invented the alembic for distillation and discovered methods for preparing important acids like nitric acid and sulfuric acid. He emphasized the measurement of quantities in chemical processes, which transformed chemistry from a magical art into a formal science. This list also includes Abu Bakr Muhammad ibn Zakaria Al-Razi, who was the first to clearly distinguish between smallpox and measles, a significant advancement for diagnosis and treatment. From the city of Cordoba in Spain, Abu al-Walid Muhammad ibn Rushd, known in the West as Averroes, was a great philosopher whose commentaries on Aristotle played a key role in the renaissance of Greek philosophy in Europe. And finally, Abdal-Rahman ibn Khaldun, who is considered the founder of history, sociology, and economics. In his book, Muqaddimah, he attempted to discover the social and economic laws that govern the rise and fall of civilizations, which became the foundation of modern social sciences. These great names and their achievements are proof that this was truly a golden age when the Muslim world was leading the entire world in knowledge, research, and innovation. But golden ages do not last forever. How did this great intellectual galaxy eventually eclipse? What were the factors that led to its decline? The story of this decline is complex, involving a fatal combination of external invasions and internal weaknesses. The biggest external shock was the Mongol invasion, especially the destruction of Baghdad by Hulagu Khan in 1258 CE. This was not just a military defeat, but a fatal blow to the intellectual heart of the Muslim world. Baghdad, which had been the center of knowledge and wisdom for centuries, was completely destroyed. The House of Wisdom and thousands of other libraries, hospitals, and observatories were burned to ashes. Historians write that the water of the Tigris River ran black for several days from the ink of the books that were thrown into it. Millions of people, including thousands of scholars, scientists, and thinkers, were massacred. This was such an irreparable loss of human and intellectual capital that it broke the continuity of thought forever. But the Mongol invasion was a knock on a door that was already weakened from within. The seeds of decline were being sown internally. In the latter part of the Golden Age, some Muslim rulers themselves began to suppress scientific thought and intellectual freedom. Their priorities shifted from the promotion of knowledge to maintaining their personal fame, political power, and religious authoritarianism. The great philosopher Ibn Rushd was declared a heretic by Caliph al-Mansur. His books were publicly burned and he was humiliated. A thinker like Al-Kindi was publicly flogged 50 times for his rationalist views. Ibn Sina had to wander from place to place to save his life because rulers were afraid of his fame. Al-Razi's own book was beaten over his head until he went blind. This was a sign that the ruling class had now become fearful of knowledge. Alongside this, a deep intellectual change was taking place in society. Around the 10th century, the Ash'ari school of thought gained dominance, which rejected causality, the law of cause and effect. Their doctrine, known as occasionalism, was that no natural laws are at work in the universe. Fire does not burn cotton because fire has the property of burning, but rather, God directly creates the act of burning on each occasion that fire and cotton meet. This doctrine dug out the very foundation of scientific inquiry. If there are no consistent and discoverable laws in nature, and every event is a direct result of divine intervention, then why try to know these laws? This thinking severely damaged scientific curiosity and gave birth to an intellectual laziness. The same doctrine fueled the division between religious and worldly knowledge that is still deeply embedded in our society today. Religious scholars began to preach that reason and scientific inquiry were enemies of faith. Knowledge was divided into religious and worldly categories. Religious sciences, Quranic exegesis, hadith, jurisprudence, were deemed superior, while worldly sciences, science, mathematics, medicine, were considered inferior, unnecessary, and even dangerous. Experimental sciences were excluded from the curriculum of madrasas, whereas they had previously been a part of them. This was a tragic irony because the Quran itself repeatedly invites reflection. But in that era, these verses began to be interpreted to mean that one should submit to God's power, but not try to understand how He does it all. The final nail in the coffin of this decline was the closing of the gate of ijtihad. Ijtihad, meaning to find solutions to new problems based on reason and reasoning, was the original spirit of Islam. But around the 12th century, influential circles closed the gate of ijtihad by saying that all problems had already been answered by past scholars, and there was no need for any new thought. This promoted a culture of taqlid, or blind imitation, and blocked the paths of critical thinking, questioning, and new research. States also stopped funding science and research, and new technologies like the printing press and the telescope began to be opposed because they threatened the control of the conservative past. The effects of this historical decline can still be clearly seen in the Muslim world today. The performance of Muslim countries in the field of science and technology is extremely disappointing. Out of the nearly 500 scientists who have won Nobel Prizes in science in the last 123 years, only 3 were Muslims, and even those 3 conducted their research not in Muslim countries but in Western institutions. The 57 Muslim countries combined spent only 2.4% of the world's total on research and development. The misinterpretation of the concept of kun fayakun, be and it is, the fear of asking questions, and the mentality of always blaming external conspiracies for our failures are all results of this historical legacy. So what is the way forward? Can the legacy of this golden age be reclaimed? The first step is to learn from past mistakes and to honestly analyze why the decline occurred. We must revive the true spirit of ijtihad to cultivate a culture of independent thought, critical thinking, and scholarly research.
We must reject this false division between the religious and the worldly, and understand that the knowledge of science and technology is actually a means of understanding God's universe. Above all, governments and societies must make heavy and sustained investments in education, research, and scientific institutions. This is not just a question of money or buildings, but a question of changing the mindset. We must break the chains of nostalgia, blind imitation, and fear of questioning, and look towards the future by embracing rationality, innovation, and curiosity.